She was rejected on a Christmas blind date until a little girl asked,
"Can you be my new mom?"
Snow fell thick and quiet on the streets of Boston that Christmas Eve. Twinkling lights wrapped around lampposts and carols drifted from open shop doors. Inside Green Lantern Bistro, warmth pulsed like a heartbeat. The restaurant was packed. Families filled every table. Children laughed between mouthfuls of pasta, and couples clinked glasses in soft candlelight. Samantha Hart stood just inside the door, brushing a few snowflakes from her coat. Her emerald green dress, chosen carefully for tonight, hugged her figure gently. The color made her blue eyes stand out. Her hair fell in soft dark waves down her shoulders, slightly damp from the snow, and a touch of hope still clung to her smile as the hostess guided her to table 9. It was her first blind date in over a year. Her best friend, Rachel, had been persistent. "You never know, Samantha. He's a decent guy, smart, single. At least meet him." So, she had said yes. For a while, she sat alone, trying not to look at the time. The table was beautiful. Linen cloth, a small flickering candle in a silver holder, and 2 polished wine glasses waiting to be filled. Samantha checked her phone once, then again. The server came by and offered water. She smiled politely, waved it away. He was only 15 minutes late. Then 20. Then 35. At minute 40, Anthony arrived. He was tall and well-dressed, but the moment he saw her, he sighed, an audible, disappointed breath. "Sorry," he said flatly, pulling out his chair. He didn't take off his coat. Traffic was insane. Samantha smiled anyway. "It's okay. It's Christmas Eve, everyone's out." He glanced at her, then at the menu, then at his phone. He ordered a beer without asking if she wanted wine. The server hesitated, looking at Samantha. She asked for water. They talked. Or rather, she tried. He answered in half sentences, checked his watch twice, and kept his coat buttoned. Then, 20 minutes in, he set down his beer and leaned back. "Look," Anthony said, his voice careful but cold. "Rachel mentioned you have a kid." Samantha's chest tightened. "Yes, a daughter. Clara. She's 6. He nodded slowly, like a doctor delivering bad news. That's great for you. But I'm just not looking for something that complicated right now." The word landed like a stone. "Complicated. I'm looking for something simple, he continued. "No baggage. Just easy." Samantha felt her throat close. She nodded once, unable to speak. Anthony stood, dropped 2 20s on the table. "I hope you understand. You seem really nice. But this just isn't what I'm looking for." And then he left. Samantha sat there, staring at the candle. Around her, families laughed. A father fed his toddler a bite of bread. A couple kissed beneath the mistletoe hung near the bar. She was too much. Too complicated. Too broken to choose. She gathered her coat, her purse, her dignity, and stood. She made it 3 steps toward the door before the tears started. Most people will keep scrolling, believing single moms don't deserve fairy tales. But if you stayed, if you believe every woman, no matter her past, deserves to be chosen, subscribe. You want to see how this ends. Samantha pushed open the heavy door of the restaurant, stepping into the cold. Snow swirled around her, clinging to her hair, melting on her cheeks where the tears had already started. She wiped them quickly, angry at herself for crying over a man who couldn't see past a beautiful, smart, brave 6-year-old girl. She pulled her coat tighter and started down the sidewalk. "Excuse me." The voice was small. "Hi. Curious." Samantha stopped and turned. Standing just outside the restaurant door was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 3 years old. She wore a bright red velvet dress with white tights and shiny black shoes. Her dark hair was pulled into 2 pigtails with bangs framing her round face. In her arms, she clutched a well-loved teddy bear, its fur worn soft from 1,000 hugs. The little girl tilted her head, studying Samantha with the kind of honesty only children possess. "Why are you sad?" she asked. Samantha blinked, caught off guard. She crouched down slowly, bringing herself to the child's level. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Just had a hard night." The little girl frowned. "You were crying." "Yeah," Samantha admitted softly. "A little." "Ruby." A man's voice cut through the moment, firm but not harsh. Samantha looked up. He was tall, strikingly handsome, with dark hair neatly styled and sharp features softened only slightly by concern. He wore a dark winter overcoat over a 3-piece suit, the deep burgundy vest visible beneath. A gold watch chain glinted at his waist. His eyes, deep and watchful, moved from his daughter to Samantha, assessing the situation with the protective instinct of a father. "I'm so sorry," he said, stepping forward and placing a hand gently on Ruby's shoulder. "She got away from me." "It's okay," Samantha said, standing and brushing the snow from her knees. "She's fine." Ruby looked up at her father, then back at Samantha. "Daddy," she said, "can she eat with us?" The man, Richard, Samantha would later learn, looked startled. "Ruby, we can't just." "Please." Ruby tugged on his coat. "She's all alone. And it's Christmas." Samantha felt her heart crack open just a little. "That's really sweet, but I don't want to intrude." Richard met her eyes. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. He saw something there, something raw and real and tired. And maybe he recognized it. "You're not intruding," he said quietly. "If you'd like to join us, you're welcome." Samantha hesitated. Every logical part of her said to decline, to go home, to cry in private and move on. But Ruby reached out and took her hand. "Please," the little girl whispered. And Samantha, for the first time in a long time, said yes. The hostess seated them at a corner table near the window. Ruby insisted Samantha sit next to her, and Richard took the seat across from them both. The little girl set her teddy bear in the fourth chair, adjusting it carefully so it could see everyone. Samantha couldn't help but smile. "This is Mr. Buttons," Ruby announced proudly. "He's very old." "He looks very wise," Samantha said seriously. Ruby giggled. Richard ordered for Ruby without looking at the menu. Mac and cheese, no peas, apple juice, not too cold. The kind of order that came from routine, from knowing. Samantha ordered something light she couldn't remember 30 seconds later. Richard asked for coffee. "I'm Richard, by the way," he said, offering his hand across the table. "Richard Hills." Samantha Hart. His hand was warm, his grip firm but brief. "And you've met Ruby." "I have." Samantha looked down at the little girl, who was now coloring on the kids' menu with a green crayon. "She's wonderful." "She's persistent," Richard said, though his tone was affectionate. Ruby looked up. "Daddy says that means I don't give up." "It does," Samantha confirmed. The food arrived quickly. Ruby ate with the focused determination of a toddler on a mission, occasionally offering bites to Mr. Buttons. Richard watched her, then glanced at Samantha. "I really am sorry about earlier," he said. "She has a habit of adopting strangers." "I don't mind." Samantha meant it. Ruby finished a bite of mac and cheese, then turned to Samantha with sudden, devastating seriousness. "Can you be my new mommy?" The table went silent. Samantha froze. Richard closed his eyes briefly, exhaling through his nose. "Ruby," he said gently, "we've talked about this." "But I don't have one," Ruby said, her voice small and matter-of-fact. "Everyone else does." Samantha's throat tightened. She looked at Richard, whose jaw was set, his expression carefully controlled. "Ruby's mother passed away," he said quietly. 2 years ago." The words settled between them like snow. "I'm so sorry," Samantha whispered. Richard nodded once, looking down at his coffee. Ruby, oblivious to the weight of the moment, reached for Samantha's hand again. "You're really pretty. And nice. You smell like flowers." Samantha laughed, a soft, broken sound. "Thank you, sweetheart." She should leave. She should thank them and go. But Ruby's small hand in hers felt like an anchor. And when she looked up, Richard was watching her, not with pity, but with something else. Understanding, maybe. Or hope. 3 days later, Samantha sat across from Richard in a small coffee shop 2 blocks from her apartment. Ruby was with Richard's mother for the afternoon. The shop was quiet, warm, filled with the low hum of conversation and the hiss of the espresso machine. Richard stirred his coffee slowly, staring into it like it held answers. "I didn't plan to date again," he said finally. "After Lena died, I thought that was it for me. I had Ruby. I had my work. That was enough." Samantha stayed quiet, letting him speak. "But Ruby keeps asking. She sees her friends with their moms, and she doesn't understand why she doesn't have one." He looked up, and then she saw you, and she decided. "She's 3, Samantha said gently. "She's 3 and she knows what she wants," Richard said with a faint smile. "I didn't expect to feel anything. But when I saw you that night, standing in the snow." He trailed off. "I don't know. Something shifted." Samantha swallowed hard. She'd been holding her own truth back, afraid of the weight of it. "I need to tell you something," she said. Richard looked at her, waiting. "I have a daughter too." His eyes widened slightly. Her name is Clara. She's 6. Samantha's hands trembled around her mug. Her father left before she was born. It's just been the two of us since. Richard didn't move. Didn't speak. That's why Anthony left the other night, Samantha continued, her voice shaking. He said I was too complicated. That I came with too much baggage. She met Richard's eyes. So if this is too much for you, I understand. I won't blame you. Richard set down his coffee. He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, his gaze steady and unwavering. Samantha, he said quietly, you're not too much. You're not too complicated. He paused. You're just real. Samantha felt the tears start again, but this time they weren't from pain. I'm terrified, Richard admitted. Of failing Ruby. Of betraying Lena's memory. Of screwing this up. He reached across the table, his hand hovering just above hers. But I'm more terrified of not trying. Samantha placed her hand in his. And for the first time in years, neither of them felt alone. The park was nearly empty that Saturday morning. A thin layer of snow covered the playground, and the swings hung still in the cold air. Samantha held Clara's hand as they walked toward the bench where Richard waited with Ruby. Clara had been quiet the whole drive over. She'd asked questions all week. Who is he? Why does he want to meet me? Does he have a kid too? Samantha had answered as honestly as she could. He's someone I like. He wants to meet you because you're important to me. And yes, he has a daughter. Her name is Ruby. She's 3. Now, standing 10 feet away from them, Clara squeezed Samantha's hand tighter. It's okay, baby, Samantha whispered. We can leave whenever you want. Richard stood when he saw them. Ruby, bundled in a puffy pink coat, peeked out from behind his leg. Hi, Richard said warmly. He crouched down to Clara's level. You must be Clara. I've heard a lot about you. Clara looked at her mom, then back at him. Hi. Ruby stepped forward, still clutching her teddy bear. She stared at Clara with wide, curious eyes. I'm Ruby, she announced. This is Mr. Buttons. Clara's shoulders relaxed just a little. I have a bunny named Stars. Do you like princesses? Ruby asked. Clara nodded slowly. Yeah, Elsa is my favorite. Ruby gasped. Mine too. And just like that, the ice broke. Within 5 minutes, the two girls were sitting on the bench together, talking about princess dresses and favorite colors. Ruby showed Clara the sparkly bracelet she wore. Clara showed Ruby the glittery hairpin in her braid. They didn't run or play yet. They just sat close, speaking in that private language children have when they decide someone is safe. Samantha stood beside Richard, watching. They're okay, Richard said softly, as if reading her mind. Yeah, Samantha whispered. They are. Ruby slid off the bench and tugged Clara's hand. Do you want to go on the swings? Clara looked back at Samantha. Samantha nodded. The girls ran toward the swings, their laughter bright against the quiet morning. Ruby needed help getting on. Clara, older and more confident, climbed onto hers and started pumping her legs. Then she stopped, slid off, and walked over to Ruby. I can push you, Clara offered. Ruby beamed. Okay. Samantha's throat tightened. Richard's hand found hers. She's good with her, he said quietly. Clara's always wanted a sibling, Samantha admitted. I never thought it would happen like this. Richard turned to face her. His expression was serious, but his eyes were soft. What does this feel like to you? Samantha watched the girls. Clara was pushing Ruby gently, counting each push. Ruby was giggling, her pigtails flying. It feels like something I didn't know I was allowed to want, Samantha said. Richard stepped closer. Me too. They didn't kiss. They didn't need to. They just stood there, side by side, watching two little girls who had already decided they belonged to each other. And for the first time, Samantha let herself imagine it. A family. Not a broken one or a blended one. Just a whole one. Ruby called out, Clara, come swing with me. Clara ran back to her own swing. They pumped their legs in rhythm, trying to go higher together, laughing every time one of them went too fast or too slow. She's going to ask if we can see them again, Samantha said. Ruby already did, Richard replied. 3 times this morning. Samantha smiled, then looked up at him. This is scary. I know. But I don't want to stop. Neither do I. Behind them, the girls shrieked with laughter. Clara had jumped off mid-swing and landed in the snow. Ruby clapped and cheered like it was the greatest trick she'd ever seen. Richard pulled Samantha closer. And in that moment, neither of them said it out loud. But they both felt it. This could be real. If you've ever been told you're too much or too complicated to love, don't scroll past this. Subscribe and watch what happens when two broken families choose each other anyway. Most people won't finish the story. But you're not most people. Helen Hills had sharp eyes and a sharper intuition. She'd raised Richard alone after his father passed, and she knew her son better than he knew himself. So when he invited her to lunch at his house and mentioned a woman named Samantha would be there with her daughter, Helen knew this was serious. She arrived early, letting herself in with the key she'd never given back. The house smelled like garlic and tomato sauce. Richard was in the kitchen, stirring a pot, his sleeves rolled up. "You're cooking," Helen observed, setting her purse on the counter. "Don't sound so surprised. You only cook when you're nervous." Richard didn't deny it. The doorbell rang. He wiped his hands on a towel and went to answer it. Helen stayed in the kitchen, listening. She heard Samantha's voice first. Warm, a little uncertain. Then Clara's, polite and soft. Ruby's squeal of excitement echoed down the hall. When they walked into the living room, Helen took them in. Samantha was lovely. Not in a polished, trying too hard way. Just naturally warm, the kind of woman who smiled with her whole face. Clara stayed close to her mother's side, but her eyes were curious, kind. Ruby grabbed Clara's hand immediately. "Come see my room. I got new stickers." The girls disappeared upstairs, and Helen watched Samantha's eyes follow them. "She'll be fine," Helen said. Samantha turned, startled. "I know. She's not used to new people." "Neither is Ruby," Helen said. "But they seemed fine at the park." Samantha smiled. They did. Lunch was simple. Pasta, salad, bread. The girls ate quickly, then asked to be excused. Richard hesitated, but Samantha nodded. They were just upstairs. It was fine. Helen watched Samantha carefully throughout the meal. The way she listened when Richard spoke. The way she checked the stairs every few minutes, making sure the girls were okay. The way she offered to help clear the plates without being asked. After the girls came back down and curled up on the couch to watch a movie, Helen pulled Richard aside in the kitchen. "She's good with them," Helen said quietly. "She is. Ruby loves her." "I know." Helen crossed her arms. "But you need to be smart about this, Richard." He looked at her, waiting. "You're not just choosing a partner," Helen continued. "You're choosing a mother for Ruby. And Samantha isn't just choosing you. She's choosing a father for Clara." She paused. "If this falls apart, it's not just your heart that breaks. It's theirs too." Richard's jaw tightened. "I know that." "Do you?" Helen's voice was firm, but not unkind. "Because I've watched you grieve for 2 years. And I understand that. But if you're going to do this, you have to be all in. Both of you." Richard glanced toward the living room. Samantha was sitting on the floor beside the couch, braiding Ruby's hair while Clara explained the movie plot in whispered detail. "I'm terrified, Mom," he admitted. "Good," Helen said. "That means you're taking it seriously." She reached out and squeezed his arm. Then she walked into the living room and sat beside Samantha. "You're good at that," Helen said, nodding toward Ruby's braid. Samantha smiled. "Lots of practice." Helen watched her for a long moment. Then she said, "Ruby hasn't let anyone touch her hair since Lena died. Not even me." Samantha's hand stilled. She looked down at Ruby, who was giggling at something on the screen, completely at ease. "She trusts you," Helen said quietly. "Don't take that lightly." "I won't," Samantha whispered. Helen nodded. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. When Samantha and Clara left that evening, Helen stood at the door with Richard and Ruby, waving goodbye. After the car pulled away, she turned to her son. "She's the one, isn't she?" Richard didn't answer right away. But when he did, his voice was steady. "Yeah, I think she is." Helen smiled. "Then don't let fear ruin it." The drawing was made with crayons, the kind that smudged at the edges and bled through the paper. Ruby's teacher handed it to Richard at pickup, her smile cautious but kind. "She's been drawing this all week," the teacher said. "I thought you should see it." Richard looked down. There were 4 stick figures. One tall with dark scribbled hair labeled Daddy. One small with pigtails labeled Me. Another small one with long hair labeled Clara. And one in the middle, wearing a green dress, labeled Mommy. Richard's chest tightened. "She talks about Samantha constantly," the teacher added gently. "I just wanted you to be aware." He nodded, unable to speak, and took Ruby's hand. In the car, Ruby chattered about snack time and circle songs, oblivious to the weight her father carried. That night, he texted Samantha a photo of the drawing. She called him 2 minutes later. "Richard," she breathed. I don't know what to say." "She drew you as her mom," he said quietly. Samantha was silent for a long moment. Then she said, Clara asked me yesterday if Ruby could be her sister. Richard closed his eyes. What did you say? I said maybe. I said we'd see. Samantha's voice cracked. I didn't know what else to say. They're already there, Samantha, Richard said. They've already decided. I know. But we haven't. Samantha didn't respond. Are you scared? He asked. Terrified, she admitted. Because if this doesn't work, it's not just us who get hurt. It's them. Richard looked at the drawing on his kitchen table. For stick figures. A family. What if it does work? He asked. Samantha exhaled shakily. Then everything changes. Yeah, Richard said. It does. They stayed on the phone in silence for a while, neither willing to hang up. Finally, Samantha whispered, I need time to think. Okay. Not because I don't want this, she added quickly, but because I do. And that's what scares me. Richard understood. Take all the time you need. But when they hung up, he stared at the drawing for a long time. And he wondered if time was the one thing they didn't actually have. Because the girls had already chosen. Now it was just a matter of whether the grown-ups were brave enough to follow. The holiday fundraiser was held at the Grand Ballroom downtown. White lights draped from the ceiling, and a massive Christmas tree stood in the corner, surrounded by wrapped gifts for families in need. Samantha wore a navy dress, simple and elegant. Clara held her hand, eyes wide at all the decorations. Richard and Ruby arrived minutes later. Ruby wore a white dress with a red sash, her hair in curls. The moment she saw Clara, she broke free from her father's hand and ran. Clara. Ruby threw her arms around her. You're here. Clara hugged her back, grinning. I told you we were coming. Samantha met Richard's eyes across the room. He smiled, and something warm spread through her chest. They found seats together at a table near the stage. The girls sat between them, whispering and giggling through the speeches and the auction. When dinner was served, Ruby insisted on sharing her role with Clara. Clara gave Ruby half her dessert. Then Helen arrived with a few of her friends from the charity board. She greeted Richard with a kiss on the cheek, then turned to Samantha. Samantha, dear, Helen said warmly. I'd like you to meet some friends. Samantha stood, shaking hands with two women she didn't know. One of them, an older woman with kind eyes, looked down at the girls. And who are these darlings? Ruby answered immediately. I'm Ruby. And this is my sister, Clara. Samantha's breath caught. Clara beamed. Yeah, we're sisters. The woman smiled. How wonderful. And is this your mother? Ruby looked up at Samantha, her face so open, so sure. Yes, that's my mommy. The room seemed to tilt. Samantha looked at Richard. His face had gone pale. His jaw was tight. He wasn't smiling. Helen's friends congratulated them, said something about blended families and love, and moved on. But Richard didn't move. He just stared at the table. Richard, Samantha said quietly. He stood abruptly. Excuse me. I need some air. He walked toward the hallway without looking back. Samantha's stomach dropped. She looked at the girls, both still happily eating their cake, oblivious. I'll be right back, she told them, then followed Richard into the hall. He was standing near the coat check, hands in his pockets, staring at the floor. Richard, what's wrong? He didn't answer right away. When he finally looked at her, his expression was guarded, distant. This is happening too fast, he said. Samantha's heart pounded. What do you mean? They're calling each other sisters, Samantha. Ruby just called you her mother in front of people I know. He ran a hand through his hair. I wasn't ready for that. She's 3, Samantha said, her voice shaking. She doesn't understand. But I do, Richard interrupted. And so do you. If we do this, we're not just dating. We're building a family. With 2 kids. 2 histories. 2 complications, Samantha finished, her voice breaking. Richard looked away. Samantha felt the tears start, hot and angry. You're panicking. I'm being realistic. No, she said, stepping back. You're scared. And I get it. But don't stand there and pretend this is about timing. Her voice cracked. Just say it. Say I'm too much. Samantha. Say it. Richard closed his eyes. I don't know if I can do this. The words hit like a slap. Samantha nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. Okay. Samantha, wait. No. She turned and walked back into the ballroom, grabbed her purse, and crouched beside Clara. We have to go, baby. Clara's face fell. But we just got here. I know. I'm sorry. Samantha's voice was steady, but her hands shook. Ruby looked up, confused. Where are you going? Samantha couldn't look at her. She took Clara's hand and walked toward the exit, ignoring Helen's concerned voice calling after her. She made it to the parking lot before the sobs came. Clara held her hand tighter. "Mommy, what happened?" Samantha knelt down, pulling her daughter close. "Nothing, sweetheart. We're okay." But she wasn't. Because once again, she'd been too much. Too complicated. Too broken to choose. Samantha didn't leave her apartment the next day. She called in sick to work, let Clara watch cartoons in her pajamas, and tried to pretend her heart wasn't shattered. At noon, there was a knock on the door. She ignored it. Another knock. Then a small voice. "Samantha? It's Helen." Samantha hesitated, then opened the door. Helen stood there holding a small box and a familiar black glove. "You left this at the fundraiser," Helen said gently, holding up the glove. "And Ruby wanted you to have this." She handed Samantha the box. Inside was a drawing. The same one Ruby had made at school. For stick figures. A family. And beneath it, in Helen's handwriting, the words Ruby had dictated, "Please don't be sad. I love you." Samantha's throat closed. "He's an idiot," Helen said bluntly. "But he's a terrified idiot who lost the love of his life once and is scared to death it'll happen again." "I can't make him not scared," Samantha whispered. "No," Helen agreed. "But you can decide if he's worth waiting for." Helen left. Samantha stood in the doorway, holding the drawing. Clara came up beside her. "Is that from Ruby?" Samantha nodded. "I miss her," Clara said quietly. "Me too, baby." That evening, Samantha sat on the couch, staring at the drawing. She'd almost convinced herself to let it go, to move on, to protect herself and Clara from any more hurt. Then there was another knock. She opened the door. Richard stood there, snow dusting his coat, his face raw and red from the cold. Or maybe from crying. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "I'm so sorry." Samantha didn't move. "I panicked," Richard continued, his voice breaking. "I heard Ruby call you mommy, and I realized how real this was. How much I'd lose if it didn't work. And I got scared. So you pushed me away," Samantha said quietly. "Yes." He stepped closer. "And it was the biggest mistake I've ever made." Samantha's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want easy, Samantha," Richard said. "I don't want simple. I want you. I want Clara. I want all of it. Messy and complicated and real." He reached for her hands. "I want us to be a family." "You hurt me," Samantha whispered. "I know. And I'll spend every day making up for it if you let me." Samantha looked at him, searching his face. "What if it doesn't work?" "Then we'll have tried," Richard said. "But what if it does? What if this is exactly what all four of us have been waiting for?" Samantha's tears spilled over. "I love you," Richard said. "And I love Clara. And I'm choosing you. Both of you. If you'll still have me." Samantha pulled him inside and kissed him. And for the first time in days, she let herself believe. 2 weeks later, the four of them walked into the Green Lantern Bistro. The hostess recognized Samantha and smiled knowingly. "Table for 4?" she asked. "Yes," Richard said, holding Ruby's hand. "Table 9, if it's available." It was. They sat in the same spot where Samantha had waited alone that Christmas Eve. But now, Clara sat beside her, coloring on a kid's menu. Ruby sat beside Richard, swinging her legs and clutching Mr. Buttons. The waiter brought cocoa for the girls. Coffee for the adults. Richard waited until the girls were distracted, then reached across the table and took Samantha's hand. "Samantha Hart," he said quietly. "I don't have a ring yet. And this probably isn't the right way to do this. But I can't wait anymore." Samantha's breath caught. "Will you let me be your family?" Richard asked. "Will you let me be Clara's dad, and let Clara be Ruby's sister, and let all of us figure this out together?" Samantha's eyes filled with tears. She nodded. "Yes." Ruby looked up. "What happened?" Clara grinned. "I think we're a family now." Ruby gasped. "Really?" Richard smiled. "Really?" Ruby squealed and threw her arms around Clara. "We're sisters. For real." Clara hugged her back, laughing. The waiter returned, smiling at the chaos. "Ready to order?" "Pancakes," Ruby announced. "Celebration pancakes." "For everyone," Richard agreed. They ate together, the four of them, laughing and talking and stealing bites from each other's plates. And when they finally left, walking out into the snow, Samantha looked back at table 9 one last time. She'd sat there once, alone and heartbroken, believing she'd never be chosen. Now she walked out holding Richard's hand, with 2 little girls skipping ahead, arguing about whether Elsa or Anna was braver. And she realized something. She hadn't been chosen in spite of being a mother. She'd been chosen because of it. Because the right person doesn't see your past as baggage. They see it as proof that you know how to love. Most people believe fairy tales don't happen to single moms. They think complicated means unworthy of love. But if this story proved them wrong, if you believe every person, no matter their past, deserves to be chosen, subscribe. Because stories like this need to be told. And you made it to the end. That means something.